Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
Now, the other side of this with behavioral resistance that we've seen a lot of is we tend to have static pest management programs. And what I mean is you will have, and I'm talking mainly in commercial, because honestly, we don't see as much behavioral resistance in our residential work. We, largely where we are, we're dealing with Paramiscus mouse species, and they are still curious, and they will eat any bait we want to feed them, and they're happy to comply. So when I talk about this, it's in a commercial setting. We have most traditionally, you'll ring a facility with tin cats. You have your mechanical stations throughout a facility, and they're static. They're all placed with their little markers, and they're numbered, and they're on the map for the site. And boy, we feel like we just did just an outstanding job. And now each month we go there and we walk through and we check every one of these 100 sites throughout the facility. And we get done and we go, hey, we didn't catch anything today. A+, we did a great job. Perfect. And then you talk to the plant manager and they said, yeah, we saw mice running between these boxes over here and we found some droppings over there. And you go, geez, what the heck's going on here? So those static stations seem to be like some of the first to have behavioral resistance to them. They know they're there. You don't catch anything in those.
Absolutely. And I mean, it kind of flies immediately in what I just said previously, which is, having a familiar box on site will increase engagement, but also not being dynamic with what you're doing will give you a false sense of security. So familiar smells, great. Doing the same thing, it's the same thing. You will kill all the dumb ones and only leave the smart ones. You'll kill all the ones who enjoy going into boxes and leave the others behind. To use some statistics here, we were talking, I think, in our last podcast around qualitative and quantitative data. Your quantitative data is my bait box has had food taken from it. And if you're only relying on that, then you're only seeing half the picture. Your qualitative data is your footprints on site. It is the farm manager or the site manager saying, yeah, they're everywhere. They took down a beagle the other day. It was mad. That's your qualitative data, isn't it? And it shouldn't be passively generated. There's so much stuff we can do to actively generate qualitative data. And with that, it's the same before I was saying, the tracking of them. If you can obviously see them avoiding what you're doing, then you're looking at a behavioral or any other form of resistance. So never just rely on your boxes to tell you, because I've got some wonderful pictures of some smart technology boxes that I was trialing out, and trialing out a lot of different types of boxes. And one of them basically said, no take, no take, no take, no take. Isn't this great? There's no rats on the site. Please move the boxes to a site with more rats. I was like, there are definitely rats here. And they're like, no, we've got no telemetry coming from the boxes. They're obviously not here. Move the boxes around. And I sent them a picture of one of them, just a rat sat on top of one of their boxes, cleaning itself. That's it. They know the boxes are here. They just don't want to go in them. There was no problem with the box. It was just a problem with the rats at the end of the day. But it goes to prove, doesn't it, that you need to be as adaptable as the furry little critters that we are pitting ourselves against.
For sure.
And it takes a humble moment, doesn't it, to admit you've been outsmarted by something with a brain the size of a peanut, which is probably just as smooth.
That's 100%. I found a lot of times the program has to be more dynamic. I've gotten success where you can surprise them. You'll move things in different areas, and if they're used to, hey, this station sits right underneath this station marker, and it's been here for 5 years, and then you move it and change a few things. All of a sudden, you can see some reaction there. Now, this brings up something that this is one of the biggest problems that I've seen here with the electronic rodent monitoring is that these stations get installed and set up and they're static and they tell you that everything is A-okay. And we've taken a lot of these systems where you will go and find the devices and there's rub marks over the top of the device. The device never having alerted saying, hey, there's been activity here. And the what I call zombie programs where no one's really checking them out, and they're just relying on, hey, if there was a mouse in there, it would give me an alert. It's giving me no alerts. I'm doing nothing. Well, you're really going to be doing nothing because we're going to be taking that account over now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, the sad thing is that a problem with the technology? You know, there's an expression, isn't there, which is what is it? It's called having a picnic. You know, the problem is a picnic because the problem is in the controller, not in the component. You know, or
Yep.
problem between component and user. This is the issue, isn't it? The problem that bit of technology, fantastic, does exactly what it says on the tin. The problem is the deployment of it, the monitoring of it, and the subsequent use of it, terrible. And I think we mentioned this at the last podcast, which is there's tremendous scope for smart technology, so long as it's used right, so long as it is sold right. And as you say, zombie programs, zombie pest management, which are not looking for that qualitative data to follow. And, you know, they've got the quantitative, my box says 0, you know, my bait take says 0. But the smear marks over the top tell me something different. So is that a problem with the box?
Right.
Maybe. Would another box have done better in that place? Probably not. Problem, therefore, not the box. You know, root cause analysis. What is the problem? Why are the rats not going in the box? Is it the box? Probably not. Is it the rat? Probably yes. So what can I do to break this cycle? Can I, in Europe, we have what we call covered and protected. I don't think you have that label condition there. In Europe, covered and protected is you can apply bait in a situation where you can guarantee that bait is covered and protected from non-target animals. So in reality to that would be, for example, in a rural environment, taking a block bait on a string, putting it inside an object. No, sorry, better way of describing this rather than going to like the ephemerals. If you put bait in a tray in a kickboard underneath someone's kitchen and then put all the kickboards back on, that's covered and protected because it's covered over and it's protected from engagement from non-target animals. So with that, you know, would you put a bait box underneath that person's kickboard? Probably not. If you put a little plastic tray under there and they're avoiding that, probably not. Cardboard tube in that place. It's covered, it's protected. Happy days. Problem in controller, not in component. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, and that's where where I wish that some of these electronic monitoring systems were more modular and adaptable. Because largely now they're part of a device that's all together. You have to either take the whole thing or not. And with what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I want to be able to modify the type of material and the type of station and where it's placed. And I still love the electronic monitoring part of it, but I just want to be able to be adaptable to the different environments that we need to get interaction with it.
I mean, so theoretically you do. So I think I wrote a letter which was partially taken up and largely ignored by the industry, where I actually broke down one of those fun things. I came up with a good idea and it was just too much hard work. So what I tried to do is I was ranking basically smart technology, smart devices against two axes there. On one axis you had observation and simple interaction, and the other one you had readings and engagement and control. And so with that, if you have something that is able to observe but not control, you have a camera basically. Camera is smart technology. That is a rat, that's a mouse, that's a pigeon, beluga, whale. I know what it is, I know where it is, I know where it's going. Flip side of that, you have something that's able to control but only on interaction. That's a smart rat trap, isn't it? Or a smart mouse trap. It's open, it's closed. It's partially open. I assume there's someone in it. So with that, you have that, but that can't tell me if it's a rat or a mouse or anything else. Then you have the really smart systems which say, right, I know exactly what it is and where it is and what I've caught. The point being is sometimes a camera, you'll get more bang for your buck using a remote viewable camera than you will do using the smartest all singing, all dancing Snapchat going that'll text your phone at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell you it's gone off. What have you called me? I don't know. I've just gone off.
And you're 100% right. Like our use of cellular connected game cams is
Mhm.
like through the roof. Like we
Mhm.
deploy these all the time, and there's been a lot of situations that we just probably wouldn't have been able to solve, or if we were, it would have taken much longer than being
Mhm.
able to observe the animal and what's actually happening, how they're interacting
Yeah,
with what we're doing, and we've
and
learned
that's
so much from that.
yeah, and that's smart technology, and
Yep.
that's your qualitative data to back up your quantitative data. And there's a couple of companies in the UK who are actually now selling programs, baiting strategy, baiting programs. They're selling sort of SLAs, service level agreements, where they will install cameras on the site, which are not just smart, they're AI smart, and they're infrared at the same time. So you put one of these little turrets on the roof, and it will look over your warehouse, and it will basically be able to distinguish between a human being. Don't need to tell anyone about that, to a mouse or a rat moving through that warehouse. Now, again, standard game cameras and the rest of it, it's looking for movement. If you look for a
Mhm.
PIR sensor, PIR is actually a really interesting bit of technology because it's taking two basically radioactive rods and measuring the difference in intensity between A and B. So all they can say is something's moved in front of it, which is why theoretically, if you look head on a PIR camera, you can walk up to it without it ever going off. But these infrared cameras will basically be able to say, right, there is something the size of a mouse moving across this warehouse. It's moving from A to B. We will alert the user. Ah, that is some just phenomenal technology. Very expensive, and one day it will become, into the realms of us mere mortals as opposed to large national companies. Um,
Right.
but
Right.
the concept is there. It's
Hmm.
so fascinating that's somewhere where they've gone with that technology, and with that, bringing this all the way back to behavioral resistance, you can tell what that animal's doing, where it's going. You can tell how long it sat on the floor if you really wanted to, by the little puddles of heat it leaves behind. Is it eating my bait? Why not? Is it the bait? Is it going into the box? Yes, probably my bait it doesn't like. Is it not going into the box in the first place? Probably the box. And that point, then you start taking away that animal's superpower. Right, different box. Am I going to go for covered and protected placement, or whatever you guys do in the
Yeah.
States?
Yep.
Am I going to use a wooden box over a plastic box? Am I going to use a wooden trap over a plastic? I keep saying wooden boxes like they're their answer to everything. Metal boxes. That's not plastic, is it? They would
Right.
work very well as a an alternative to that, and be lockable, and be safe, and be all these other things as well. Yeah,
For sure.
maybe for a safeguarding point of view and a stewardship thing, let's just keep saying metal as opposed to plastic. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah. And then that kind of brings us to what the heck are we doing about this right now? How do we deal with this? From where we are now, and there's I think you're right. I think there will be some technology advances that are going to be really awesome, and I think that as more people experience behavioral resistance in a real significant way, like I don't know that it's widespread everywhere, across the whole, say, U.S. or something. But I know in our area it is definitely something that we see so often that we factor it into our operations.
Oh,
And I think as that sort of experience spreads, there's going to be more and more of a market for some of these electronic monitoring advances, where people are going to be willing to say, "Look, we have to do something here, because we're just not
and
getting any control."
yeah, and I think that is step number one. Stepping back from what taking, and there is a place and there is a conversation to be had around what formulations, what types, what the rest of it. I think step number one, before we even talk about formulations and alternatives and the rest of it, we have to be better at seeing it. We have to be better at recognizing it. So with that, and it's the same with all things. You don't use it as an excuse for a failed treatment, just
Right.
on an assumption.
Right.
Generate that data. And pest management around the world, I ask in a lot of my lectures, I'll ask in a lot of my, the rest of it, are you a scientist? No, mate, I'm a pest controller. Do you generate data? Not really. I'm a pest controller. Well, that's a lie on both counts. The amount of data that we generate as we wander around the sites is phenomenal. You're looking around, you're looking at the weather, you're looking for footprints, you're looking at how that box has interacted, you're looking at the difference between A and B. Has that here? How much has been eaten? What are their bite marks? Where are they? All of this stuff, a tremendous amount of data. What we are terrible at, I mean terrible at, is writing it down. And what we're
Yeah.
worse at by a factor of 10 is making people understand that garbled nonsense that we then write down. We generate so much data. We are a data rich industry. We're dealing with a dynamic animal, several dynamic animals, in situations which can change at the drop of a hat. The data that we generate is huge. Our ability to internalize it and process it is actually quite phenomenal, and you do it on the fly. You should probably all give yourselves much bigger kudos for being able to do this as you wander around. But what we all need to learn to do, job number one, point zero, communicate this information better, capture it better, keep better records of it. Because is this a single instance of behavioral resistance? Or is this an ongoing trend? Is this an issue I've been seeing for a while? Is this trend getting worse and worse and worse? Or is this just simply an artifact? Is this just one animal that's being an ass? Or is this a population of animals that have had a collective epiphany as
Yeah.
to upset your day? So number one, get better at record keeping before we talk about
That's
anything else.
yes, 100.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm sure you've had this experience as we do things in the lab here. Invariably, we will think something is a certain way, and then we'll collect all kinds of data on it, and we'll review the data. And 9 times out of 10, it's exactly the opposite of what we thought it was. We'll think something's going bad, and your gut just doesn't have a great feel a lot of times for what the data is actually going to tell you. So yeah, confirming, documenting and then confirming what that data is telling you is huge.
Yeah. It's I have such respect for like the pest management community in the sense that we chronically undersell ourselves, both in terms of cost, but also in terms of skill and value at the same time. And yeah, we need to do better than that. And as I said, it's not just confined to the labs. It's nice to do in the labs because it's a controlled environment, and we have assumptions, and you go into everything with assumptions. You have to have an assumption. It's called a hypothesis. But it's fine for that assumption to be wrong. You learn as much from it,
Yep.
and there's no shame in thinking this is what's happening, and then being able to hold your hands up and say, you know what? It's actually not, because that's as valuable as getting it right every time.
Mhm. Yep.
Understanding when you've got it wrong, understanding when your assumptions are being challenged is as valuable, if not more, because otherwise you don't learn, you don't grow. So yeah,
Yep.
job number one.
Yep, for sure.
Job,
So
job number two. Let's talk about the toys.
That's right. That's right. So, so some of the mitigation I have towards the bottom of our outline here. I was going to run through a couple of the things that we've been doing differently, as a result of behavioral resistance, and these are things that are sort of outside the norm necessarily of like standard operating procedures that I saw for the past 15 or 20 years. One is we've been relying on visual inspections a lot more than just because there was a time when you'd go through, commercial account, check all those stations, nobody's home. Oh, that means nothing happened. Bait didn't get fed on. That means there's no mice there. We're good. No, that doesn't tell us. At this point, I've almost rejected the premise of, hey, if I don't have bait feeding and I don't catch anything in the stations that are preset in this account, that doesn't mean there's not mice. That doesn't even, I don't feel good at all that there was a time when I would say, everything's A-okay. We'll give you a clean bill of health. Let's move on. So we're stepping up on visual inspections. Like I said, motion activated game cams, we're deploying those all over the place. We need eyes on site that they if a mouse runs through there, boom, that thing's going to catch it. We'll get an email and it'll say, yep, here's what we saw. And I can't tell you how many times we have them looking at our stations a lot of times. And we will have, for every one capture on a station, we might have 100 alerts of a mouse that didn't go in the station. I mean,
Wow.
it's literally 100 to 1. I have, we had a data set from a warehouse, food distribution warehouse. I think we had 6,000 data points of inspections of traps. That's 6,000 times we checked the bait stations there. Each one would be one data point, right? Like there's 100 stations, that's 100 data points. we caught one mouse. We had mice in there. Oh geez, I just ran the numbers yesterday. I can't remember, but it was a chronic rodent problem where every time we were there, we were getting, you know, 5 to 10 sightings and, you know, running around and droppings and yada yada, and that's on top of 6,000 inspections of a trap that turned up nothing. Unbelievable. So
So how do you? So the question is then, so that's a classic example of, potential behavioral resistance, which you then confirmed with your camera. So that's our
Yep.
phase number one, confirmation through data and integrity. So number two, so how did you start to get around that? So what did you start to change that
Yep.
brought that problem? Because I imagine you're not going to be telling me this story if it's got a sad ending.
If it, we still do the account. Mouse problem is under control. Yes. If it's got a set, no, I would share with you anything. So there's 3 things that we did. Okay. And this one was from a number of years. Like I said, this was probably 2017, 18, 19, somewhere in that range when this all sort of happened. And this was the first one where we saw like, oh my goodness, this is a huge problem, this behavioral resistance, and we need to figure this out. So what we discovered, one was to use, you've heard of pulse baiting, where you'd bait and then you pull the bait out. We started doing pulse methods for everything. So nothing would be static. So our equipment would go out when we had enough observations to say, okay, this area is where we need to be. Boom, we'd go with equipment, capture what we can, and then pull that equipment out. So they're not having experience time to like get used to it and learn about it. We didn't want to
creating a disruptive environment, basically.
Pretty much. It's like you don't want to show your poker hand. Like we're gonna boom, we get this out here, and we'll get some of them, and then pull that material out. So pulse methods for everything, not just with bait application. We'd use novel materials, so that's cardboard station things and wood, and we'd try to use different materials that they haven't seen, stations they haven't interacted with, and that would usually get again a couple more. None of these things are a one silver bullet thing, right? Like you're not going to be like, well, I just switched everything to this type of material and they haven't seen it, so I caught every single one. No, you'll catch 25% of them because you did pulse methods. You put stuff out and some of them blundered onto it. You get another extra 25% because you used a material they haven't seen before. The biggest one, though, and this was very unusual for me because my training way back was, hey, on the interior of the house, the exterior envelope, let's say, of a structure, you want to seal up so rodents can't make their way in. But on the interior, we never really did a lot. We weren't sealing holes that went from your living room to your kitchen, right? They're already inside the house. They're going to find their way wherever they're going to find their way. And same thing with commercial accounts. If they're inside, they're making their way anywhere that they want. What we started to do was what I started calling create a kinesthetic stress to that rodent. So in our observations and our cameras, we would see where they wanted to go. And it was not where our traps were. It was however they were. We would alter the environment in a way. It's almost like they know the maze and now you're just going to change where all the walls are. And what we were able to see and what the light bulb that really went off for us. And I think I've sent you a couple of the videos. You should check those out. They're in the portal. I think I sent them to you, and is it Eleanor?
Ellen.
Okay, yeah. Because we discovered this with one mouse in particular, and it really was like the Rosetta Stone mouse for us with this. We had a mouse that we knew was going in a very specific way. He was avoiding our traps. We had snap traps. We tried bait stations. We tried tin cats. We tried glue boards. We're swapping out different things. And he is going around, or she is going around him, no problem. Finally, we say, okay, we're just shutting this down. It was a metal wall that meets a concrete wall, and it was a little gap. And we're like, and it was from one room of a warehouse to another room of the warehouse. It wasn't going outside. It was just going between them. When we shut that spot down, the reaction of that animal was, the only thing I could describe is sort of panic, like absolute stress. running around trying to figure out a way, jumping up, the wall to grab and try to find a way out. And then he would come out into the middle in the open and like smell the air. Like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what.
Reassessing the situation, and
Reassessing, yes. So now he's in or she, whatever. It's in a discovery mode. It's in a different. It doesn't know what it's really supposed to do, and we're able to capture that on a snap trap completely by they're panicked and now they made a mistake. And you can see it, the whole thing play out from beginning to end, all the way to the capture. And so we started to do that now in anywhere where we have behavioral resistance. We change the environment in ways that cause disruption to what they want to do in like severe ways. And in that it sort of scatters them. They're now trying to figure out, hey, I need to relearn a path now. And in the process of doing that, they're far more susceptible to the control measures.
Making a mistake. Yeah.
They're making mistakes. Yep.
So that's so interesting, because for years and years I've taught. There's two. So this is another Wadeism here, as opposed to a UKism.
Yeah.
But I've taught there's always two types of proofing. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is exclusion. Okay, that is stopping. That's, as you say, that's the perimeter. That's the barrier around a building. That's the envelope. That is exclusion into the premises. Type 2 proofing is to alter or direct or control the movement of that animal in a way that is beneficial to you. So if you've got 3 holes in a wall, you close 2 of them down and you leave the third one open, because then that animal has to use that third hole, and you know that it's going to emerge at that point, which means that you can focus your attentions more clearly on that point. So type 1 is your exclusionary. Type 2 is your like behaviorally forcing the animal to behave in a way that is conducive to your program, as opposed to uncontrollable. Instead of trying to fight 100 fires at once, you can focus on 2 or 3 in a controlled environment, like a controlled burn. So at that point, you have that. So it's interesting to mention that it's the same thought process, just different terminologies. And that's fascinating at the end of the day. That's, I think that's called convergent evolution. That's it's your Temerics and your hedgehogs there. Pick which one you want to be.
There you go.
So there we go. So no, that's fascinating. So that was, you say that's number one. You created a disruptive environment with your moving things in, moving things out. So you're never leaving things static, never letting the animal get acclimatized to a situation. Number 2 was altering the fabric or the form, the fabrication or the formulation of what you were doing. So breaking that associative link between plastic and danger, or wheat and danger, or X, Y, and Z. And then the last one, which is I wouldn't have thought to talk about it, but it definitely is a big one, isn't it? Is the control, bringing that animal's behavior under your control. You become the dictator of behavioral patterns, and even if you can't control it to the footstep, you can control it in the broadest sense of, I only want you to operate in this room now. This is the room in which you will operate. You want to run across the floor? The floor's made of lava, mate. No, not a chance. So no, that's fascinating.
I wonder if it's almost a, because I get what you're saying. So you have you're saying exclusion number 1, like where you're keeping them from getting in. We always consider that the exterior envelope, from entry. Number 2, directing them down a path you want to take. It's almost like, I feel like this is number 3, where I would fill all the holes. I want to cause as much panic and stress that I can. And with these ones, what we've done is not necessarily like exclusion that is impervious. Like, we don't have to use steel wool and hardware cloth and things like that. Even things that they can chew, your regular foam, quick and dirty, boom, expanding foam, which everyone hates. I'm not looking to stop them forever. What I'm looking to do is cause them to pause and reassess and have to try to figure out something. So that's
just trying to remember, because there is a military term for providing control over the AOE. I'm trying to remember what it is, because that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Isn't it something does Sun Tzu talk about it in Art of War? That like you define the place that the battle happens. Like
Yes,
whoever
it
can
is.
control the battlefield where the battle is going to occur is going to win the battle. And
Yeah,
that's
right, that's it in a nutshell. Yeah, there is a military acronym for exactly that.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a Sun Tzuism, and actually, I wrote a couple of presentations called "The Art of Poor" a little while back. Yeah, because I'm that
perfect.
funny. But it was looking around. It was called strategy versus tactics.
Mm,
Because our strategy is, and this was I came up with this after reading a quote from a guy called Max Yu,
mm,
who's a chess player. And he said that strategy requires thought and tactics require observation. Your strategy is, I'm going to deploy a pulse baiting strategy, a speed baiting strategy. I'm going to use tamper resistant stations. I'm going to place them every 5 meters apart. Your tactics is what you do when you actually get there. Your strategy is what you come up with in the car on the way there. And the tactics are how you actually deliver that strategy. My strategy is, and I think that's a phenomenal way of thinking, because one of them's very static, one of them's very
mm.
rigid, one of them is I come back 14 times a year, I'm going to use this. And tactics are the very pliable, the very dynamic application of our knowledge to solve a specific situation. And you'd think, oh, why don't we just all use tactics? But actually, if you don't have a strategy to, base your tactics on, then and there's lots of something. I did this entire presentation called Strategy versus Tactics,
Yeah,
which was just on this, and it was things along the lines of, prolonged siege never. There was no winners in a prolonged siege at the end of the day. Choose your battlefields,
yeah,
and ultimately, I spelt the word optics or something like that. But that was a good fun one to do, and it's exactly that. There's a huge amount of
yeah.
human beings are very good at a couple of things, and arguably the one that we're best at more than anything else is you know killing things and killing each other. Let's not beat about the bush. And for one
Yeah.
reason or another, we've done it for a very long time. Since before recorded history. So there's a huge amount we can actually learn and borrow from military doctrine.
For
You're
sure.
just taking a very big animal and applying it to a very small animal, and it sounds a bit trite, but at the same time, a lot of these Sun Tzuisms, a lot of these procedural tactics, they work quite well.
Yeah,
Control the area,
yeah.
control the battlefield, and you will control that. Meet the enemy on your behest. Know the
I
enemy,
love it.
and you will, win every battle. If you don't know yourself, you lose every one of them.
That's right. No, well, and what I think you're saying, like, if somebody that gets too and I think maybe that's some of the problem here with people
Hmm,
struggling with behavioral resistance is they get attached to the tactics that have worked in the past, and
hmm,
they just go, "Oh, I'm a snap trap guy. I'm going to use snap traps
hmm,
all the time," or I use bait stations, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, too reliant on a very narrow
hmm.
set of tactics and not allowing yourself to go, okay, what's on, all the options are on the table as far as tactically, and then
Yeah,
applying the best tactic for each situation that you're sort of dealing with.
absolutely. It's that
Yeah,
flexibility, it's that adaptability, it's being agile, I think is what they call it in corporate terms.
yeah,
You can turn on a pin. You have a catalog in the back of your van, don't you, at the end of the day? You can do anything that you put your mind to. So
yep,
why pigeonhole yourself with just what you know? It's what I've always done. Are you having
yep.
problems with this one? Yes. Maybe consider potentially doing something different. it's
If it's
it's
not
one of those.
working, don't do the same thing. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, it's
goodness,
it's the
awesome.
definition of insanity, isn't it?
It
Doing the
is.
same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
It is
So there we go.
for
Oh, this
sure.
has been phenomenal. Have we
Absolutely.
got through everything we wanted to talk about? I feel as though we've
I
we
think
have bopped around like a box of frogs here.
we have no.
Mm,
I think we covered everything for now. I think this is an emerging field
mm.
of
Oh yeah.
study in our industry, and I'm really interested to see what the next bunch of years brings. But yeah, I think this was great. Thanks for coming on.
Mm.
And I don't know how long Gabe's going to be out, but maybe we'll have you on again. We'll see what we can
Oh,
do.
absolutely. Well, we'll do a bit of a camera. You'll probably see the canvas maybe before we put the podcast out, but we need something else to talk about. Well, behavioral resistance was fantastic, but I don't think you want to hear me talk about chemical resistance again. That probably is
No, I
beyond
love it.
most people's palate, let's say. But I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, for the folks listening to this who have got this far. Thank you very much. But with that, if you are interested in any of these resistances, there are programs out there. I know there are programs in the UK for looking at behavioral resistance. I know there are programs in UK and Europe for looking at chemical resistance. There's got to be something in the States. I really sort of like, I urge you to just search for them, find them, engage with them, become the citizen scientist. I think they give you a lab coat and a little lapel pin. Don't quote me on that, but Amazon's also wonderful. But engage in the science. Make it part of your own. Make this industry your own. And if you want inspiration, just go to the Rodenticide Resistance Action Committee, the European initiative. See some of the work that they've put out. Borrow it, steal it. Use it for your own. Spread the information. Create your own programs. Because we all win at the end of the day. The manufacturers win because it gives them a direction to push their products in. You win, it gives you better strategies. Your clients win because they've got nowhere else to mice. Society wins because disease drops through the floor.
Yep. And if you search enough, you'll find yourself a picture of Alex from 10 years ago talking about behavioral resistance. I came across a few things, so that's a little Easter egg that's out there on the internet somewhere.
That is genuinely, that's a picture taken from 2015, 2016, when I used to run a site called Church Farm, which was a huge site. It had pens of rats that were 60 feet long by 30 feet wide, and we had hundreds of rats living in each one. And we didn't use them for any kind of sort of like nefarious experiments. We didn't throw chemicals in there or the rest of it. It was exclusively for training and behavioral observations.
Wow.
And we would put different boxes in there, and we'd see how long it took them to get used to the boxes, and X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I think the picture of me there, I am not grey. For starters, I'm anyone who's listening to this, I am ferociously grey. And for anyone also listening, anyone watching this, I'm going to give you, a real shocker. I'm not even 40 yet.
Oh no. That needs to be our next thing. We're going to do guess Alex Wade's age. That'll be our next. We can give a prize.
There we go. I tell you what, if anyone can get my age down to the year and the month on the when this goes out live, I'll send you a cap. I don't care. I'll figure it out. We'll get it out to you.
Awesome.
Perfect. But thank you ever so much for having me on. It's been, we've been talking for well over an hour now. So.
For sure. All right, everybody, like, subscribe, all those things. Check us out on Coast to Coast on LinkedIn, and hopefully we'll get Gabe back eventually. But Alex is a great stand-in. Thanks for coming, Alex.
Absolutely. Thank you ever so much.